I thought I kind of got this idea about a year ago that in 2016 when I started like kicking off my season for Rio, that I wanted to come back to Doane and do that. I usually come back a couple times a year to train, and I thought this was a cool opportunity maybe to kind of start the year, kind of where this whole journey kind of started, kind of a little nostalgic. I think every season's always a little bit nerve-wracking in some ways. You coming off vacation, you never quite know where you're at. So I thought this would be kind of a fun little thing to have some fun the first day and kind of enjoy it, and then to come back and kind of see my old school and some of the new athletes and see some of the old faces. And I just thought there'd be like a lot of great energy there. So I think that's kind of why I decided to do it.
Welcome to the media. Any questions?
Jerry, can you explain to us in 500 words or less
Oh God.
In a tweet?
the qualifying procedure in as you look at qualifying, getting on the team for Rio, keeping in mind all this stuff with standards, and you've got the national title in your pocket already, and how that will all unfold in these next few months.
Yeah, so the way that they do the standards to qualify for the Olympics in track and field is you have to hit they used to have the A and the B standard, but now it's just one set standard. So the standard's 66 meters. It's actually the highest standard in history. So it was tough to qualify for this year. So being that I'm the only one with the standard as of right now, big thing is just to go to the Olympic trials in early July, and then to finish top three. If you have the standard and finish in the top three, that's how you qualify for the Olympic team.
So if you finish top three at the trials, you're on the team.
Yep, I'm in.
That makes it easy.
That makes it easy, yeah.
You mentioned that you had a little injury issue before Beijing. How soon before
It was just kind of like just a little poorly, unfortunately timed maybe. It was just a little shoulder thing that I picked up in training camp. I think being at this level, everyone kind of gets little weird injuries and stuff like that. And being that it was a long, very intense year, I just got unlucky. I mean, it wasn't anything. We didn't train him properly. I was in really great shape going into Worlds and had a lot of expectations. So it was pretty disappointing to not at least make the finals. That was the goal that I went there with. But at the same time, it wasn't a loss at all because we learned a lot about like qualifying procedures and like kind of the fitness we needed to be into, adjustments we needed to make for training. So in reality, some people might think it was kind of like disappointing, but I really learned a lot from the experience, and I think I'm going to be much better prepared for Rio this year.
Had you been able to compete against a lot of the European guys before?
Yeah, I've thrown in quite a few international meets over the last couple years, and this year especially I had an opportunity to throw against the top guys a lot more. Actually got to throw against a group of them in Eugene at Prefontaine, and then over in Paris at that meet as well. So it wasn't necessarily like kind of something that I struggled with the competition. It was really just kind of an untimed injury. Yeah.
What's going to be your timeline from today on? And talk us through how your schedule is going to unfold in terms of your preparation here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've kind of already mapped out a lot of at least a general outline for the year. So a lot of the stuff you're going to see today and over the next month is going to be really exciting. It's a lot of just prehab, kind of preventive injury kind of stuff, and we're going to do some circuits and stuff like that, just kind of getting back into shape over about the next month. In about middle of November, I'll actually get into full training where I'll start throwing again, drilling, starting to get back on the weights and things like that. And that'll basically be what it looks like until about April. And then in April, Haven't decided where we're going to open yet, but usually I'll open about the middle of April and hit a couple European meets in May, getting ready for the U.S. Championships in July. So the big focus is obviously the Olympic trials, and so everything kind of revolves around that right now.
You might be able to get into the Jim Dutcher Classic that Thursday. I'm not sure.
It could happen.
You have a couple of events.
Could be an opening.
I don't know.
Where, now, you've been based out on the West Coast, mostly in California?
Yeah, I live in San Diego.
Yeah.
He trains at the Olympic Training Center there in Chula Vista.
Yeah.
What the, that by Mac Wilkins, you obviously were training with him. What's his, because he's been there and been through all of it and everything, what's his best advice to you at that level?
Well, I trained with Mac in Portland for a year and then in San Diego for 1 year before I kind of moved on. But, you know, I mean, and there's a lot of other really elite athletes there as well. I mean, Brittany Reese trains there. She's the Olympic champion in the long jump, and she's got 9 world titles. I mean, Will Clay trains there. He's a silver medalist in the triple jump and the bronze in the long jump. He's the first jumper ever to medal in both events. So there's a lot of experience, as well as, I mean, you know, Joaquin Cruz, our distance coach, he was a 2-time Olympic champion. Art Venegas is there. He was the UCLA coach for 40 years, and he's coached more Olympic medalists than basically any American coach ever. So we've got a lot of depth and experience. So I think being around them, and I pick up a lot of things on just a day-to-day basis, just from casual conversations to, you know, theories on training and things like that. So, you know, in being around Mac, having the opportunity to work with him for 2 years, one thing that he definitely doesn't lack is experience. So a lot of things that I learned from him are probably really experience related, you know, and maybe not necessarily Olympics, but just how working the circuit through Europe and things like that works out, you know, how to prepare for major competitions, things like that. Obviously, it's a little bit of a different era, so we prepare differently, but like I said, there's a large group of people that have been there and done it. So I think having the opportunity to train there and be around other athletes, you know, and other people that have already done it, you know, kind of have gone where I want to go. You know, there's a lot of guidance there. So,
Is there anybody that's strong there?
there's a lot of really strong people there. Yeah, there's a lot of really strong people there. We've got a very nice gym, a lot of weights.
When we talked this summer, you talked about some of the non-physical side of it, the mental preparation, the people that are helping with that, the change in diet that you had to go through and everything. Can you talk about that and the people that are helping you along in those areas?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very, very blessed because, I mean, I've really learned over the last couple of years that any individual sport, particularly track, is very all-encompassing. It's very much about not just being able to throw the discus, but all the things that kind of go along with it. You know, having a proper diet, having a good strength coach, you know, have a psychologist, you know, being able to basically not only be in good throwing shape, but all those other things that come along with it, you know, they're all important. So I've got a great sports psychologist. Her name's Tracy Statler, Dr. Tracy Statler, I should say, and she's been worked with NFL players for a long time, and now she's working with track athletes. I've worked with her for a couple years, and that's been really cool. I've never worked with any kind of a sports psychologist before, so that's been really interesting to, you know, kind of learn about myself as an athlete and kind of my strengths and weaknesses, and then, you know, going through mental exercises to, you know, improve it. A nutritionist, I work with Elisa Kendig. She is actually the nutritionist to USA Track and Field as well as the Paralympic, and I think she does maybe weightlifting and some other ones like that. She's an incredibly good nutritionist. We have a lot of the same theories and things like that. So, you know, I definitely put my trust in a lot of people's hands. So, yeah, you know, having a great support system is part of being successful. So having people like that work with you is definitely, you know, crucial to your success.
What's the average daily intake?
Well, it kind of builds as the year goes, and it definitely flows through the cycle of training that we're doing. But I usually eat around 6,800 calories, and there's a lot more specifics than that. I have to have 20% of that has to come from fats, or 30% of that has to come from proteins, things like that. So. It's been an experience. I've gone from weighing everything and writing everything down and being very meticulous to being able to kind of flow with life a little bit. And some of that's just because I've been doing this so long, I can kind of look and choose and see, and I kind of at least have a general idea. So, in 2016, things like nutrition are going to become a lot more important, just because. I've kind of found out over the last couple of years that I throw a little bit better heavier. So, and I'm not particularly good at retaining weight. So we got to last year, basically our goal weight at about 275 to 280. And so now being able to stay at 280 and not, gain more weight, a nutritionist will become a lot more important. So yeah. David.
That wasn't me.
Let's talk about Coach Dunnigan a little bit. He's been out at the U.S. Championships each time you've thrown out there. Mm-hmm. How has that played a role for you, having somebody that you had around for 4 years, and now each time you have that big competition, you hear that voice again, whether you want to or not, you probably hear it. So.
Yeah. Dunnigan's been to, what have you been to, like 6 or 7 now?
Yep.
Yeah, about 6 or 7 U.S. Championships. I think. It's really good to have a lot of consistency in your training. Being able to work with a coach long term, or have something something that's been kind of a part of your program from the beginning. In some ways, I feel like my career really kind of started at Doane. I'm from Norfolk Senior High, and I was very blessed to work with Steve Porter, probably arguably the best throws coach in the state. But when I came to Doane, my focus really shifted towards solely on track and basically making the Olympic team. So I think having somebody like Dunnigan, who's been, basically involved for 10 years now. 2006, so 10 years. Dunnigan is basically the most consistent thing that's been involved with my program the whole time. And I think having somebody that is always there for you that you can trust and rely on, even if it's just something really basic and simple as, the night before you're gonna have dinner together and just kind of take your mind off it to, something like, hey, can you carry my bag for me, or can you, or coach me from the stands, So I think I've been really lucky because Dunnigan is definitely one of the coaches that I've been around long enough, and he definitely understands that, even the smallest role is important. Like I said, like I said, hey, can you carry my bag? Can you grab that for me, or something like that? Having somebody that's not above helping me out. I think in a lot of ways, some coaches, they have a big ego, and having somebody that is definitely there, not necessarily doing it because for him, but somebody that's there doing it for me. Somebody that's there that, that can do all those little things and to take that much more stress off me. So. Yeah, I think, obviously that's kind of just the scratch of the surface. We've now known each other for 10 years. I think we started out as a coach and athlete, and our relationship's definitely evolved to a lot more of a friendship, and maybe I'm more of the coach now. But no, I think it's great. I think it's really great. I think it's always great to have somebody to bounce ideas off. Even now at the professional level, and I say I have all these people involved, everything still has to kind of flow through me. So having somebody to bounce theories and ideas off and share some of my thoughts and experiences, it's great to have somebody also who's been doing this for 35, 40, 50 years. What are you, like 100 now?
Pretty close.
Having somebody that I can really trust them and will listen to me and give me thoughtful feedback is important to me also.
Denny, what would you say there are the 2 or 3 areas that you would say he has made the biggest improvement on in terms of just his overall development as a thrower? Obviously he wasn't the most raw vegetable in the bag when you got him, but
No, Jared was very, very accomplished when I got him, but the thing that's changed, the thing that Jared can do, he was just kind of talking about that, is he's very good at analyzing the biomechanics that go into the event. And he's always been open to trying something different. May work, may not work, but we get so many people in track and field that think there's only one way and it's their way, and they're never going to get any better. So we've done things that had market improvements. We've done things that didn't work, you know, and the only way that you're going to find out if they do work is by giving it a try and see. You know, that's throughout my coaching career, I've been lucky that Mr. Biley allowed me to do things like that, you know, because it's very rare that you find a coach that will say, you know, I tell him, hey, Fred, I'm going to do this. And he would go, and Ed's the same way, you know, and they'd go, say, you know, I don't know if it's going to work or not, but we're going to try something. And Jared's been really, really good about that. He's always been a student of the event. And like he was talking about, he's probably evolved to a higher level. But it's because of the people that he gets to talk to, the people that he bounces other ideas off of. You know, I think he was saying at the Prefontaine meet, who'd you stay with? Who were your roommates? Cantor and
Martin Cooper.
yeah. You know, you'd think that at a big meet like that you'd have your own room, but you're staying with a couple of guys that just flew in from Europe. You know, so it's those kind of experiences. You know, he gets a chance to talk to somebody and he can say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Did this work for you? And they'll say no. So he can kind of streamline the process of what works and what doesn't work. And he's been, you know, being able to evolve like that. You know, we have our conversations probably wouldn't interest very many people.
Yeah, that's very true.
When we get together, we talk about a lot of this stuff, and it's probably not very interesting to anybody but us. You know, on trying to get to where he wants to be, and he's getting very, very close right now. Very, very close. But it's come because he's been able to adapt, to change. You know, and a lot of people can't do that. You know, a lot of people don't have the kinesthetic awareness. They don't have the athletic ability to change. You know, we can only get so far here. I start with people. Jared started at a higher level than most of the people I start with. But in 4 years in the life of a thrower, especially at a young age, is a very short time. And we can only, in most cases, only get up to a certain point, because there's some of these changes that take 2 or 3 years to accomplish. You know, being able to figure out where your orbit on your discus is, where the path is, where you're supposed to be. You have to get a whole bunch of things done before you can start working on the things that are going to make it go a little bit farther. He's down to working on tiny little things right now that are going to make not very big differences, but at his level, those little tiny things are going to make the difference between winning a U.S. championship and not. You know, it's little tiny stuff that he's working on. The basis of the throw's there. He's just got to keep refining and refining and refining, because he's probably not going to make a fundamental change in philosophy right now. You know, what he's going to do is he's going to do, but he's got to do it very, very well. And at our level, we get up to a point where the kids are starting to get to a place that they can do that, and then it's done. And we bring in a new bunch of inexperienced ones, and we start the whole thing over again. So it's neat to see what happens after they get out of here.
Jared, you talked about competing at the international level, being able to go against a lot of the world's best. What are some of the challenges that you face when you kind of have a routine that you're used to when you're in California or getting ready for a meet, but now you go overseas and, you know, food is different, you know, the time change is obviously a big difference. How do you adapt to all those differences?
I mean, yeah, I mean that's probably one of the biggest hurdles I think for Americans is that it's very seldom that the Europeans actually come to America to compete. Maybe only once, maybe twice a year at the most. So figuring out how to adapt to like time change and travel. You know, I mean, in overcoming little changes in food and things like that aren't necessarily that big of a deal. You can adapt to that pretty easily. But having to actually be able to travel and compete, getting off a plane after you've been sitting for 14, 16, 20 hours and then having to compete within 24 hours is really hard on your body. So it's really something that has to be really planned out and worked into your program. And that's where, somebody like a really good strength coach. I work with James Myers. He's actually probably one of the best strength coaches in the country. He's definitely the best one I've ever worked with or ever had the opportunity to work with. So having somebody that can, that you've worked with for a long time and understands your body and understands your recovery and, things like that. So having somebody like that and having somebody that has the ability to kind of understand your sport and can kind of adapt is definitely really important. And we learned a lot of that this year. I think in some ways we had a lot of success this year, but I think there's a lot more to come because this year was really revealing about a lot of things about recovery and meet preparation and things like that I haven't had the opportunity to do before, even with all my international experience. A lot of times most of my international competitions came after major championships, things like that. So they weren't necessarily something we really had to plan for. Yeah, I think going forward, that's the biggest thing is now we understand a lot more than we did even a year ago. So, yeah.
At the World Games, for Olympics, they have an Olympic Village. Do they have something similar?
Yeah, they do. And it kind of varies. I mean, it's obviously not a village. Like when I went to the Pan American Championships, there's literally a village. There's a section of town they block off, and everyone from every country stays there, and things like that. In Japan and China, especially when you go to like training camps, it's your country kind of picks where you're going to go. So we were really fortunate. We were in Japan. Japan's a really great country. It's got a great culture, and they're very friendly to Americans. So we were very well taken care of. And then even in China, they did a really good job taking care of us. USA Track and Field, we're one of the very fortunate countries that we're very well funded, and we have very knowledgeable people. So there is literally years in planning, and they go over there probably a month before we do and just start taking care of all these little things to try and reduce all the stress that we can. For the major championships, it's a lot easier to manage. You go in a lot earlier. They definitely try and customize it to be as Western or American as they possibly can, so that there's the least amount of change. Like I said, we're very blessed in a lot of ways compared to some other countries as well.
Have you picked up any hobbies or things that you do in your downtime?
Yeah.
Whether in California or when you're traveling internationally, are you able to go out and do a lot of sightseeing, or is it pretty much just I'm there to compete and that's what I'm doing?
It kind of depends on the trip, but I'm probably a lot more adventurous than most athletes. I think a lot of them will fly in and they'll spend the week in their hotel room, and that's kind of it. And maybe that's probably what I should be doing. But I think this whole thing is not just about throwing the disc. It's having the opportunity to get out and see the world and kind of live this dream of traveling and experience on all this stuff, and one day I'm going to wake up and I'm not going to have these opportunities anymore. So I definitely try and enjoy them to the fullest. I've been really lucky in a lot of the countries I've been to. I've had the opportunity to go out and see a lot and experience a lot of the cultures. So so I think I'm trying to think exactly how to answer it. That's probably the best way I can answer it. Yeah.
Any places that you've found on your trips that you've really enjoyed as far as sites go?
Yeah, I love Japan. I had an incredible time in Japan. I was in Japan for 10 days or 12 days or something like that. So we had a lot of opportunities to go out and really get to see, their country and experience their culture. And I have a good friend, Koji. He's a very famous Japanese athlete as well, and he even showed up for practice. We had an opportunity to sit down and he made some suggestions and took me took some places. So it's been that one I probably would say is my favorite trip I've had so far.
What meet coming up is he going to be the director of? They've got something big coming in Japan.
Olympics.
Koji, yeah.
Yeah, he's the meet director.
He's the meet director for the Japanese Federation, Koji Murafushi, and he's a very, very, very good hammer thrower.
Is that something that you've kind of picked up in your international competition, making friends with people from other countries and then being able to hang out with them?
Yeah,
Just,
absolutely. You know, track is a very small world. I mean, the athletes are, you know, we're not so distant from each other as I think as other sports, and we're not so distant from the public as other sports. You know, people can walk right up to us or at least close to us and interact with us. So we also get to interact a lot with each other. You know, when they cram a bunch of us into a hotel for a week, and if you're not out wandering the city, if you're there, you know, you got to find something to do. So we spend a lot of time, you know, talking about training and theories and just life in general. And then not just that, but I'm also having the opportunity to train at the Olympic Training Center. It's one of the best places in the world to train. You know, Southern California is probably the most consistent weather you can get. You can wake up every day and pick which pair of shorts you want to put on. It almost never changes. So we have a lot of international athletes come and train with us. I mean, we've had world record holders and Olympic champions and world champions and national record holders and things like that. So I had the opportunity to train with a lot of them as well. So I've had a lot of great opportunities to get to know a lot of other athletes on a very personal level, as well as just the opportunity to be athletes together.
And in the throwing events, you know, Jared's pretty young for international competition. There's some younger, but most of the throwers don't reach their peak till they're around 30 years old, maybe a little older. He was talking about putting weight on. If he's weighing 275, that's probably 25 pounds heavier than you were
I think it was
here.
245 when I graduated.
Yeah. And it wasn't because we weren't trying to get weight on, it's just young and the lower metabolism, but it takes so much longer to put good weight on, to put that muscle on, that you're not going to be really good coming right out of college. There's some, but it's a long, long process, and that's why in the United States we don't have all that many people that have the wherewithal monetarily to keep that going. You know, somehow we've got to figure out how to get that.
It's why you see that's why we see the Germans that don't have something like the NFL, the 35-year-old guys that weigh 300, 325 pounds.
Yeah, no, we don't have that kind of support that a lot of the other countries have. You know, if you're a good thrower in the European countries, you're probably going to be taken care of. You're going to have a place to train. You're going to have a stipend. Here, it's kind of hoping, you know, you can find a sponsor or you can get something, you know, to keep you going. You know, I've talked to, and Jared has too, there's been a lot of guys that were about this close to being really, really good and didn't get, you know, couldn't get over that hill because they couldn't afford it. You know, there's been some deals that they put on, you know, the help the Olympian programs where you work 6 hours at Lowe's or one of those places and you can draw a little bit of a paycheck, but, you know, training's expensive.
Yeah,
If you look at the World Athletics Center down in Phoenix, your training would cost you, what, about $25,000 a year?
I think it's like 10.
Maybe. Well, but with all the rest of it, with the meals and the supplements and the
Yeah, probably.
and the physios and all the rest of that stuff, and then it's probably going to cost you another $25,000 to live there.
Yeah.
To find a place to live, you know, so it's an investment of between $30,000 and $50,000 a year
Yeah, at the minimum.
to try to keep this going. And if you're training 6 hours a day, or 7 hours a day, or 8 hours a day, there's not much time to work and rest and do the other things that you need. So it's you know, it's amazing to me that Jared could keep it going this long. It's a testament to his determination, because I know he's had to go without an awful lot to keep this dream alive. You know, it hasn't been just a deal where you go spend 2 weeks in Japan and have fun.
No.
There's an awful lot that went into that beforehand.
What would you say, Jared, that putting Dunny off to one side just a little bit, that the experience you had here with Doane College track and field, the experiences that you had, how they lent themselves to the thrower and the athlete you are now?
I think in a lot of ways, I've actually had a lot of conversations. There's another small school kid that throws, Mike Torrey, and he's a really good friend of mine. He actually threw at Lindenwood. And we've had a lot of conversations about, and some of the things he talked about was basically, you know, one of the struggles is finding sponsors and funding and things like that. And I think coming from a small school, in some ways, it kind of lends you kind of that experience already. You know, coming from, you know, from Doane, we're very blessed, I think, compared to a lot of other small schools. We have very good facilities, and we have a lot of people that really care a lot about us. So they put in a lot of extra time. But then when you go out on your own, you're really on your own. I mean, you know, my first couple years out were very rough, and I was actually very fortunate because I had some really good friends who helped support me the first couple years. So I think coming from a small school, you learn to do a lot more on your own. You learn a lot of things, more things about self-care and kind of being more independent. You don't have so many people taking care of you. And so I think that in a lot of ways, that's why I appreciate the things I have a lot more. I don't feel really entitled to necessarily anything that I get. I feel like even the things that I get, I still have to work for. So I think having now a group of people that kind of helps me along, it's sometimes I think that it takes a while. For me, it's more of like having to build that trust because I had to do so much on my own for so long that now having a group of people that I really trust working for me, it really takes a lot of that stuff off my shoulders. So, you know, I think, yeah, the big thing I would say is just that I had to learn a lot of independence in college in terms of an athlete. And then, I mean, in being a college student, in some ways also prepares you to be a good athlete if you can kind of bridge that gap because, like you said, you very much have to become a student of your sport. You need to really learn to invest a lot more of your own time into re-educating yourself and kind of and I think in track and field, knowledge is power. The more you understand the more about your event, the more you can kind of make educated guesses about things. So so I'm still very much as much of a student or more now than before because I do have a lot of great people that I now have the opportunity to ask a lot of questions and kind of pull from their knowledge and kind of try to adapt my program around that.
Well, Jared was, you know, he probably didn't reach his potential as a college discus thrower here because we asked an awful lot of him. He didn't just throw the discus. Threw the shot, he threw the weight, threw the hammer. And he did that because we wanted some points. You know, it wasn't just a straight. If he would have just thrown the discus, he may have gotten a little farther along. But I think those experiences also lend themselves to what he's doing now. You know, he understands a little more about the kinesthetic awareness of throwing. You know, throwing's throwing, and we did an awful lot of things that may not have been all that beneficial to his discus throwing in the spring. But he made it through that very, very well. And now when he's able to just do the discus, he's much, much better.
And I'll even jump off that as well and say that, you know, I think because of some of that stuff as well, I think it has taken me longer and will still take me a little time before I really get to my peak. I think coming from small school also is one of the biggest things I had to overcome. I think was like the experience factor. I think that I was really fortunate in that I was given a lot more opportunities than probably a lot of the other small school kids that we definitely went out of our way to, go to bigger competitions and get a little bit more of that experience. But it took me a while to kind of get into the loop of some things, to travel a lot more and kind of learn how to adapt to traveling. That wasn't, we traveled to Hastings, it's a 2-hour drive. Now I have to figure out how to adapt to a 20-hour plane flight to a different place in the world. So I think that it took me a little while to kind of figure out some of even just the basic stuff that maybe some of the other school kids had kind of already experienced before that.
Well, the people we competed against, you mentioned Mike Torrey at Lindenwood. Mike's coach was the 1960 silver medalist? Bronze
The
medalist.
bronze medalist.
Bronze medalist at the Olympics, Richard Cochran. So at the smaller levels, there's some awfully good coaches. If you take a look at Richard, 1960 Olympic champion, competed against Concordia of Oregon, Mac Wilkins, the 1972 gold medalist in the discus. There were some awfully good coaches at that level. I get a chance to visit with most of those guys, know them very, very well. But you're throwing against kids that are very, very accomplished. They're getting as much as anybody in the country. And so our competition level at the national was good.
Yeah.
It's not, just because you're at a small school doesn't mean that, in track, fast is fast and far is far. It doesn't matter where you're at.
It's true.
Jared, at the Pan American Games, did you have a chance to cross paths with B.J. Lawrence or like John
No.
Green was there?
I know, actually, I had a lot of time to talk to John in Japan, actually, a lot, and then a little bit in China as well. No, I never saw BJ. I ran into BJ, I think, last year at Pan American Festival in Mexico City, but, BJ was kind of after me, so I don't really know him that well. But,
About Toulouse.
yeah, I ran into Toulouse in Toronto, actually, at Adam Bosley. I saw a couple old Doane guys in Toronto. But no, I had a chance to talk to John Green, and that was fun. I didn't really know John when I was an athlete here, and I've only got to know him actually in the last couple of years. So it's kind of cool I think, to always run into people, that were kind of, that have been around and are where you're from, that you share some kind of unique experience. So, I guarantee, somebody from LA is probably not going to relate to me the same way somebody like John would, being from the Midwest and coming from a different kind of culture like that. So, and even being an athlete, you can definitely tell there's different athletes carry different mentalities, so coming from different areas, you probably have a different outlook on life, and that affects your training. So I think talking to John was really cool. I think it was a great experience to talk to him, learn about a lot more about him. And we actually had a really, a couple times where we sat down for dinner and talked a little bit about training and some of the people he's trained and some of the things that he's done as a coach, and that was cool. I didn't really know John that way, so I think it's been fun to meet with some of our alumni. And one thing I'll say as well is that, especially over the last year, having a lot more success, I've had a lot of alumni reach out to me and send me Facebook messages or send me an email, and so it's been a really cool year to kind of get to know a lot of people from here that I really didn't know anything about before.
Can you talk a little bit about your family and their support? There's a lot of Facebook updates when you're...
Yeah, I'm super lucky. My parents are very, very involved and a very big part of my support system. My dad, this is going to be his 40th year coaching track this year, actually. And so they really understand a lot better than most families will about the time and the effort that goes into track. I also had 2 older sisters and an older brother who all threw the discus, and I have 2 parents who were also very involved in athletics. So I'm very fortunate. I always tell people that I have a really great and very understanding family. I think most people, if their kid decided to wake up tomorrow and move across the country, would probably freak out a little bit. But I've picked up and moved half a dozen times now, and then every opportunity they think is just a better opportunity. So you know, they're always supportive of most of the stuff that I do.